Hour 72 arrived faster than either of them expected. Do-hyun and Byul had spent the last day playing simple games and sharing stories. The Void Crawler had learned to play cards and was surprisingly good at it. "I think you're cheating," Do-hyun said, looking at his losing hand of Go Fish. "I cannot cheat," Byul replied innocently. "I simply remember which cards you have asked for." "That's literally cheating." "No, that is strategy." They were laughing when the chamber door opened. Professor Kilthara entered with a full medical team and security guards. The guards had weapons designed to contain interdimensional beings. Do-hyun stood up calmly. "Hi, Professor." "Time's up already?" Byul here was just getting the hang of poker. The entire team stopped and stared. They had expected to find either a broken human or a feeding void crawler. Instead, they found what looked like two friends having a casual game night. Professor Kilthara looked around the chamber. Do-hyun had built a comfortable living space. Card games were laid out on a makeshift table. The void crawler was hovering near what appeared to be a makeshift chair, almost like it was hiding behind it. "Human," Professor Kilthara said carefully. "Are you injured? Have you been harmed?" "Nope, I'm fine," Do-hyun said. "Byul's been great company. Very polite. Much better conversationalist than most of my classmates." "Byul?" The professor's four eyes focused on the void crawler. "That's what I call him, her, them." Do-hyun looked at Byul. "We never talked about pronouns." "In human terms, I suppose I would be they," Byul said quietly. Their voice was much clearer now, less otherworldly. Several of the medical staff dropped their equipment. A void crawler had spoken directly to them without projecting terror. "You communicated with it?" Professor Kilthara asked. "With them," Do-hyun corrected. "And yeah, we've been talking for 3 days. Turns out they're pretty lonely. Makes sense considering you keep them locked up between tests." Professor Kilthara looked at the security team leader. "Begin containment protocol," she ordered. The guards raised their weapons. Energy fields designed to trap interdimensional beings began forming around Byul. "Wait!" Do-hyun stepped between the guards and his friend. "What are you doing?" Returning the creature to containment, Professor Kilthara said. "The test is complete. Byul isn't a creature. They're a person. You can't just lock them up. It is a void crawler. It is dangerous. They're only dangerous because you made them that way," Do-hyun said angrily. "They told me what you did. The isolation, the starvation, the threats. That's torture." Professor Kilthara looked uncomfortable. "The conditioning is necessary for proper testing." "No, it's not. Byul and I spent 3 days together without any problems. They didn't hurt me because they didn't want to hurt me." Behind Do-hyun, Byul was trembling. The sight of the containment weapons brought back memories of capture and imprisonment. "The test requires aggression," Professor Kilthara insisted. "Why?" Do-hyun demanded. "What's the point of testing if soldiers can survive against something that's been tortured into madness? That doesn't prove anything except that you can break minds. The test has worked for 10,000 years. Has it, though? How many students have you permanently damaged? How many void crawlers have you destroyed? What exactly has this accomplished besides creating suffering?" Professor Kilthara didn't have an answer. "Please," Byul said softly. "I do not want to go back to the isolation chamber." Their voice was so quiet and broken that even the security guards hesitated. Do-hyun turned to face Professor Kilthara directly. "Give them a choice. Let Byul decide what they want to do. That is not protocol. Protocol is wrong. You've been treating sentient beings like weapons instead of people." Professor Kilthara looked around the chamber again, at the makeshift home Do-hyun had built, at the card games and shared meals, at the void crawler hiding behind a human's chair like a frightened child. For the first time in her career, she saw the situation clearly. "Stand down," she told the security team. "Professor?" the team leader asked. "Stand down. Lower your weapons." The containment fields dissolved. Byul moved closer to Do-hyun's chair, still trembling. "Byul," Professor Kilthara said carefully. "Do you wish to return to the void?" "More than anything," Byul whispered. "Then you may go. Just like that?" Do-hyun asked, surprised. Professor Kilthara looked tired. "I have made many mistakes. This program has caused immense suffering for no good purpose. It must end." She turned to her staff. "Cancel all remaining tests. Begin procedures to return the other void crawlers to their natural habitat." "But Professor," a medical officer protested, "the testing program is central to our curriculum." Then we will develop a new curriculum, one that does not require torture. Biol slowly moved away from the chair. You mean this? I can truly leave? Yes, I'm sorry for what we have done to you and your kind. Biol began to change. Their form became less solid, more ethereal. They were preparing to phase back to the void. Wait, Do-Hyun said. Before you go, will I see you again? Biol paused. Would you want to? Of course. You're my friend. Then yes, I will visit when I can. The void is vast, but I will remember the way back to this small warm place. They reached out with something that might have been a tendril or an arm. Do-Hyun reached back. For a moment, human and void crawler touched across the gap between species. Thank you, Biol said, for showing me that I am not a monster. Thank you for showing me that different doesn't mean dangerous. Biol began to fade. Goodbye, friend Do-Hyun. Goodbye, Biol. Travel safely. The void crawler disappeared, phasing through the walls and returning to the spaces between stars. Professor Kilthara dismissed her staff and approached Do-Hyun alone. How did you know? She asked. Know what? That they would not harm you. Do-Hyun thought about it. I didn't know for sure. But they were scared too. I could see it in how they moved, how they spoke. Scared beings usually just want to feel safe. And you made them feel safe. I tried to. Same as I'd want someone to do for me. Professor Kilthara was quiet for a long time. Your species continues to surprise us. We surprise ourselves sometimes too. 6 months later, the Galactic Military Academy had completely restructured its psychology program. Instead of terror-based testing, they developed courses in interspecies communication and conflict resolution. Do-Hyun, now promoted to lieutenant, helped design the new curriculum alongside Kim Min-ji and Park Ji-hoon. All 3 humans had passed their tests in similarly unexpected ways. Min-ji had convinced her void crawler to help optimize supply logistics. Ji-hoon's void crawler had become his partner in tactical analysis. The academy now hosted the first interspecies understanding corps. Former enemy species were being approached with diplomacy instead of weapons. Many conflicts that had lasted centuries were being resolved through communication. Biol had become the first void crawler to work voluntarily with the galactic military. They served as a consultant, helping to establish peaceful contact with other interdimensional species. They also helped train former test subjects, teaching them that they had value beyond their ability to inspire fear. Do-Hyun maintained regular contact with Biol through quantum communication arrays. The void crawler had discovered an unexpected love for human entertainment and frequently asked for movie recommendations. Have you seen the new Star Wars film? Biol asked during their weekly call. Not yet. Any good? The space battles are unrealistic, but I enjoy the family dynamics. Though I still do not understand why humans find the Emperor frightening. He is much less scary than a proper void crawler. Well, you're biased. You are a proper void crawler. True. Perhaps that is why I prefer romantic comedies. Do-Hyun laughed. Some things never changed. His interdimensional friend still had strange taste in movies. The door to his office opened. Professor Kilthara entered carrying a datapad. Lieutenant, she said, we have received a request from the Andromeda Military Alliance. They want to know if we can help them establish peaceful contact with a species called shadow dancers. Interdimensional fear feeders. Do-Hyun asked. Exactly. When do we leave? Professor Kilthara smiled. It was an expression that came easier to her now. Next week. Pack some extra coffee packets. I suspect you will need them. Do-Hyun grinned. Yes, ma'am. Outside his window, the stars shone bright and welcoming. Somewhere among them, Biol was traveling the cosmic void, no longer alone. And somewhere else, other misunderstood beings were waiting for someone to offer them friendship instead of fear. The universe was a vast and sometimes frightening place, but it was also full of possibilities for connection, understanding, and hope. Sometimes all it took was the courage to reach out and offer someone a cup of coffee. Test day arrived sooner than expected. The academy had moved up the schedule because too many students were dropping out. They wanted to finish before they lost everyone. The testing chamber was a large metal cube 50 meters on each side. It had basic survival supplies, water, food packets, a sleeping bag, and a small waste facility. Cameras watched from every angle. Medical staff waited outside with emergency equipment. Professor Kilthara stood before the remaining students. Only 12 had stayed for the test. The others had either left the academy or suffered nervous breakdowns during preparation. "You will enter one at a time," she announced. "The test begins when the void crawler is released into your chamber. You must survive for 72 hours. Do not expect rescue if you break down. The creature must be allowed to complete its hunting cycle." The first student was Veltar, the Zephyrian who had asked about mental shields. He was shaking so badly his exoskeleton rattled as he walked into the chamber. Dohyun and his friends watched from the observation deck. Medical staff monitored Veltar's vital signs on their screens. "Releasing void crawler," a technician announced. The chamber filled with darkness that seemed to move on its own. Veltar's fear reading spiked immediately. Through the cameras they could see something huge and wrong sliding through the walls. Veltar lasted 4 hours. When they pulled him out, he was unconscious and wouldn't wake up for 3 days. The next student was Yixandra, the blue creature who had mentioned meditation techniques. She tried to maintain a calm breathing pattern as the void crawler manifested. The creature appeared as a shifting mass of shadows with too many eyes. It moved in ways that hurt to watch, like reality was bending around it. Yixandra's meditation broke instantly. She began screaming in languages that didn't exist. She lasted 6 hours before her mind snapped completely. One by one, the alien students faced the void crawler. The longest anyone managed was 8 hours, and that was a granite warrior who had turned his fear into rage. When he finally broke, his stone skin cracked like broken glass. Finally, it was Dohyun's turn. "Are you certain about this?" Professor Kilthara asked him privately before he entered. "Your species is new to galactic society. We do not fully understand human psychology. The damage could be permanent." "I understand the risks," Dohyun said. "But I want to try." "Why?" she asked. "What do you hope to prove?" Dohyun thought about it. Maybe that being different isn't always a weakness. He walked into the chamber carrying a backpack full of extra supplies. The door sealed behind him with a heavy clang. The chamber was cold and smelled like metal. Dohyun looked around at the cameras, then waved at the one that seemed to be the main viewer. "Hi, Professor," he said. "Thanks for the upgrade on the food packets. The new ones actually taste like food." In the observation room, Professor Kilthara and her staff prepared to release the void crawler. Medical teams stood ready. They expected this to be over quickly. "Releasing creature," the technician said. The lights dimmed. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in seconds. Darkness began pouring into the chamber from somewhere else. Dohyun was unpacking his bag when the void crawler manifested fully. It was enormous. A writhing mass of shadow and hunger that existed in too many dimensions at once. Eyes opened and closed along its surface. Tentacles that weren't quite tentacles reached through the air toward him. The creature began its standard intimidation approach. Waves of cosmic dread rolled off it like heat from a fire. It projected the terror of infinite empty space, the meaninglessness of existence, the certainty of death and nothingness. Dohyun looked up from organizing his supplies. "Oh, hey there," he said calmly. "You kind of look like that thing from the Alien movies, but with more tentacles. Are you here for the test too?" The void crawler stopped moving. In 10,000 years of military testing, no prey had ever greeted it. The creature tried again, increasing the intensity of its fear projection. It showed Dohyun visions of the heat death of the universe, the collapse of all stars, the end of everything that had ever existed or would exist. Dohyun nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, I went through an existential crisis in my second year of college too. Really put things in perspective. Want some coffee? I brought extra packets." He held up a small instant coffee packet. The void crawler had never been offered refreshments before. It didn't know how to respond. In the observation room, the monitoring staff was confused. Dohyun's fear readings were barely above baseline. The void crawler's aggression levels were dropping instead of rising. "Is the equipment malfunctioning?" Professor Kilthara asked. "All systems are normal," a technician replied. "The human appears to be unafraid." Back in the chamber, the void crawler was trying different approaches. It shifted its form to become more traditionally terrifying. Claws, fangs, burning eyes, the works. "That's a good look for you," Dohyun said, setting up a small camping stove. "Very dramatic. Are you allowed to talk, or is this more of a silent stalking thing?" The creature attempted direct psychological attack. It reached into Dohyun's mind to find his deepest fears and manifest them physically. The chamber filled with manifestations of academic failure, social rejection, disappointing his parents, and dying alone. Classic human anxieties made real and terrible. Do-hyun looked around at the fear constructs and sighed. "Look, I appreciate the effort," he said. "But I've been dealing with anxiety and imposter syndrome since I was 14. You're going to have to try harder than that. Also, my actual mom is way scarier when she's disappointed." He pointed at a manifestation of his mother frowning. "See? You made her eyebrows too angry. Mom's disappointed face is more subtle. It's in the way she purses her lips." The void crawler was experiencing something unprecedented. Its prey was critiquing its psychological warfare techniques. "The academic failure thing is pretty good, though," Do-hyun continued, making coffee. "But you should add more specific details. Like instead of just "you failed your exams," try "you failed your exams and now you have to explain to your family why you wasted their money." That's the real fear. The creature had never received constructive feedback before. Hours passed. The void crawler tried every technique it knew. Nothing worked. Do-hyun either ignored the attacks or offered helpful suggestions for improvement. "You know what might work better?" Do-hyun said around hour 6. "Instead of showing me my death, show me everyone I care about living happy lives without me. That's way more psychologically devastating than just dying." The void crawler attempted this new approach. It showed Do-hyun his friends and family moving on happily after his death, never thinking about him. "Okay, that one actually stings a bit," Do-hyun admitted. "Good job. But you're still missing the human element." Human element. The words seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Do-hyun paused with his coffee cup halfway to his lips. "Oh, you can talk. That's great. Makes this much easier." The void crawler realized it had spoken without meaning to. In its confusion and exhaustion, its natural communication instincts had taken over. "Yes," it said hesitantly. "I can speak. Awesome. I'm Do-hyun, by the way. What's your name?" The creature had never been asked its name. "I am the void crawler." "That's not a name, that's a job description," Do-hyun said. "What did your parents call you?" Parents. The concept was foreign. Void crawlers were not born in the traditional sense. Family? Friends? "What do other void crawlers call you?" "We do not interact socially," the creature said slowly. "Oh man, that sucks. No wonder you guys are so grumpy all the time." The observation room was in chaos. No one had ever recorded a void crawler speaking before. Professor Kyle Thera was frantically taking notes. "Should we intervene?" a medical officer asked. "No," Professor Kyle Thera said. "This is unprecedented. We must see where it leads." In the chamber, Do-hyun had set up a small camp. He patted the ground next to him. "Want to sit? You must be tired after all that reality bending." The void crawler hesitated. Sitting was not something it did, but it was exhausted from trying to terrorize someone who wouldn't be terrorized. Cautiously, it settled part of its mass near Do-hyun's makeshift camp. "Better?" Do-hyun asked. The creature considered this. "Yes," it said quietly. "This is better." Hour 16 arrived without Do-hyun even noticing. He had been talking with the void crawler about Earth, about human movies, about why humans seem to enjoy being scared. "So you watch these horror films for pleasure?" the creature asked. Its voice was getting clearer, less echoing and strange. "Yeah, it's fun," Do-hyun said, sharing his lunch rations. "The scary stuff isn't real, so we can enjoy the adrenaline rush without actual danger." "But I am real," the void crawler pointed out. "And dangerous. Are you, though?" Do-hyun asked. "I mean, you're definitely real. But are you actually dangerous to me specifically?" The creature thought about this. "I feed on fear." "You are not afraid. So I cannot feed on you." "Right, and if you can't feed on me, then you have no reason to hurt me. We're just two beings stuck in a room together for 3 days." The void crawler had never thought of it that way before. In all its centuries of existence, it had only been summoned to hunt and terrorize. This was its first conversation. "What is it like?" the creature asked suddenly. "What's what like?" "Having friends, family, others of your kind who care about you." Do-hyun could hear loneliness in the creature's voice. It made his chest hurt. "It's nice," he said gently. "Sometimes annoying, but mostly nice. You know someone cares about you. Someone will notice if you're gone." "No one notices when I'm gone," the void crawler said quietly. "I exist in the empty spaces. When I'm not being summoned for tests, I float alone in the void between stars." "That sounds really lonely." "I did not know loneliness had a name until now." Do-hyun looked at the creature more carefully. Up close he could see that it wasn't just a mass of darkness and eyes. There were patterns in its form, structure that suggested intelligence and maybe even beauty. "How long have you been doing these tests?" he asked. "I do not measure time as you do, but long, very long. Do you like doing them?" The void crawler was quiet for a while. "No," it finally said. "I do not like making others suffer. But it is what I was trained to do." "Who trained you?" "The military contractors. They found me in the deep void and brought me here. They said I would have purpose, meaning. But all I do is hurt frightened children." "Wait," Do-hyun said, sitting up straighter. "You don't want to hurt people?" "No. I hunger for fear, yes, but I do not enjoy creating suffering. There is a difference." Do-hyun felt a surge of anger, but not at the creature. "They're forcing you to do this." "I am contained between tests," the void crawler admitted. "Kept in isolation chambers that prevent me from returning to the void. I am only released to hunt. That's horrible." "You're basically a prisoner." "Prisoner," the creature repeated the word slowly. "Yes, that is what I am." In the observation room, Professor Kyle Thera was watching with growing unease. The conversation was revealing things about their testing program that she had never considered. "Should we intervene now?" a staff member asked. "This is highly irregular." "No," she said firmly. "Continue monitoring." But privately, she was beginning to question everything. Back in the chamber, hour 24 had passed. Do-hyun had built a small shelter using supplies from his backpack and furniture from the room. When the station's lights dimmed for the sleep cycle, he invited the void crawler to share the space. "You want me to sleep near you?" the creature asked, bewildered. "Sure. It's warmer with two and you look tired." "I do not sleep as you understand it." "Then just rest. You've been working hard trying to scare me for hours." The void crawler cautiously moved closer to the shelter. For the first time in its existence, it was being offered protection instead of being used to threaten others. "Why are you being kind to me?" it asked. "Why wouldn't I be?" Do-hyun replied. "You haven't actually hurt me. You're just stuck doing a job you hate because someone is forcing you." "But I am a monster. You're a person who looks different from me. That's not the same thing as being a monster." The creature settled near the shelter. The warmth from Do-hyun's body heat felt strange and wonderful. "Tell me about the void," Do-hyun said softly. "What's it like out there?" The void crawler began to describe its home. The vast emptiness between galaxies, the strange beauty of cosmic phenomena, the way light bent around massive objects. It spoke of nebulae that sang in frequencies only it could hear, of the dance of distant galaxies, of the profound peace of infinite silence. "It sounds beautiful," Do-hyun said. "You think so?" "Yeah, lonely but beautiful. Like a really big art installation." The creature had never thought of the void as art before. "I suppose it is, in a way. Do you miss it?" "Every moment I am here." They talked through the night cycle. The void crawler told stories of the strange things it had seen in deep space. Do-hyun shared stories about Earth, about his family, about his dreams of becoming an engineer. "You want to build things," the creature observed. "Yeah. Bridges, spaceships, stations like this one. Things that help people. I have only ever been used to break things, to break minds." "That's not your fault," Do-hyun said firmly. "That's what they made you do. It's not who you are." Hour 36 came and went. The monitoring staff was amazed. No test subject had ever lasted this long while remaining psychologically stable. "The human's fear levels are actually lower than when he started," a technician reported. "And the void crawlers' aggression readings are near zero," another added. Professor Kyle Thera watched the screens, showing Do-hyun and the creature sharing food and continuing their conversation. This was not how the test was supposed to go. "What should we call you?" Do-hyun was asking the creature. "I can't keep calling you void crawler. That's insulting." The creature considered this. Deep in its consciousness, there was something that might be a name, a concept that described its essential nature. "In my kind's way of thinking," it said slowly, "I am the one who walks between stars seeking understanding." "That's as beautiful," Do-hyun said sincerely. "It's kind of long for everyday use, though. Mind if I call you Byol? It means star in Korean." The creature felt something warm and strange in its core. No one had ever given it a nickname before. "Byol," it repeated. I like that." "Great. Nice to meet you properly, Byol." "Nice to meet you too, Do-hyun." Hour 48 arrived. They had been friends for over 2 days now. Byol had learned about human music, literature, and food. Do-hyun had learned about cosmic phenomena and the deep loneliness of existing between worlds. When this test ends, Byol said quietly, they will take me back to the isolation chamber. Maybe not, Do-hyun said. Maybe we can change things. How? I don't know yet. But I think the professors are starting to realize they've been doing this wrong. Through the cameras, they could see increased activity in the observation room. People were arguing, pointing at screens, making urgent communications. What do you think they're saying? Byol asked, probably trying to figure out why their scary monster test turned into a friendship. Do-hyun said with a grin. Hour 60 came and went. Byol was telling Do-hyun about the first time it had been summoned for a military test centuries ago. How confused and frightened it had been to suddenly find itself in a metal room with a terrified alien cadet. I did not understand what they wanted from me, Byol said. The cadet was so afraid and that fear called to my hunger, but I did not want to hurt them. What happened? I tried to comfort them, but my presence only made their fear worse. Eventually, the military staff intervened. They said I had failed the test because I had not been aggressive enough. So they trained you to be meaner. Yes. They withheld food, kept me in smaller and smaller containers, showed me images of my home being destroyed. They said if I did not perform better, they would never let me return to the void. Do-hyun felt his anger growing again. Byol, what they did to you is called torture. It's wrong. I know that now, Byol said quietly. But I was desperate to go home. The creature moved closer to Do-hyun's shelter. For the first time in centuries, it felt safe enough to be vulnerable. I have never told anyone about this before, it said. Thank you for trusting me, Do-hyun replied. In the observation room, Professor Kilthera was staring at the screens with growing horror. She was finally understanding what her academy had been doing to these creatures. The next week passed quickly. Professor Kilthera held special classes about void crawlers every day. She wanted the students to understand exactly what they would face. Void crawlers have been used as the ultimate test for over 10,000 years, she explained to the remaining students. Half the class had dropped out after the first announcement. Every advanced military in the galaxy uses them. She showed them historical records. Ancient species had discovered the creatures in the deep void between star systems. They lived in the empty spaces where nothing else could survive. They exist partially outside our dimension. Professor Kilthera continued. This allows them to phase through solid matter. Walls, doors, weapons, nothing can stop them. The professor played videos of previous tests. Students from different species entered the testing chamber confident and strong. Hours later, they came out broken and screaming. Many never recovered. The creatures project waves of pure terror, she said. They feed on the fear they create. The more afraid you become, the stronger they get. Do-hyun took notes while the alien students around him shook with fear. The Granite Warrior students had turned completely white. The Luminal students were so dim they looked like dying candles. They can alter local reality through fear manipulation, Professor Kilthera explained. They make your nightmares real. They show you your death over and over again. She showed brain scans of previous test subjects. The fear centers of their brains had been completely burned out. Some species never felt emotion again after facing a void crawler. The record holder lasted 31 hours, the professor said. Ket Moran of the Iron Mountain clan. He was the strongest granite warrior of his generation. Now he counts prime numbers all day and cannot remember his own name. One student raised a shaking appendage. It was Veltar, a Zephyrian like the professor. What if we use mental shields? Veltar asked. Or fear-blocking drugs? Void crawlers exist beyond such protections, Professor Kilthera replied. They reach into parts of your mind that you cannot guard. No technology or drug has ever helped. Another student, a tall blue creature called Yxandra, spoke up. On my world, we have meditation techniques for controlling fear. Many have tried, the professor said. All have failed. The creature's presence destroys mental discipline. It makes calm impossible, Do-hyun raised his hand. The class had gotten used to his questions by now. Yes, human? Has anyone ever tried talking to one? Do-hyun asked. The room went completely silent. Professor Kilthera's 4 eyes focused on him. Talking to it, she repeated. Yeah, I mean, they're intelligent enough to be trained, right? So they can probably communicate somehow. They are predators, Professor Kilthera said firmly. They do not communicate. They hunt. But the old reports from the Kepler incident mentioned curious behaviors, Do-hyun said. One void crawler spent hours examining human art installations without attacking anyone. Those reports were classified, the professor said sharply. How do you know about them? I have a really good library access code, Do-hyun replied. My point is maybe they're not just mindless monsters. Professor Kyle-Thera looked uncomfortable. The creatures used for testing have been modified to be more aggressive. Modified how? Ji-hoon asked. He had been quiet until now, but his tactical mind was engaged. They are kept in isolation, the professor admitted, fed only during testing, made desperate and hungry. So you're torturing them to make them meaner, Minji said. It wasn't a question. It is necessary for proper testing, Professor Kyle-Thera replied, but she didn't sound convinced. What if it's not? Do-hyun asked. What if the test would be more effective with creatures that aren't artificially enraged? The test has worked for 10,000 years, the professor said. It does not need changing. But Do-hyun could see doubt in her eyes. He had given her something to think about. After class, the three humans went to the library. It was mostly empty. The alien students were too scared to focus on studying. I've been reading about fear responses in different species, Minji said as they sat down. Humans are really weird. How so? Do-hyun asked. Most species have a simple fear response. They see danger, they run or fight. But humans actually seek out controlled fear experiences. She showed them her research on her tablet. Horror movies, haunted houses, extreme sports, roller coasters. Humans are the only known species that enjoys being scared. That's because we separate real danger from fake danger, Ji-hoon said. We can enjoy the adrenaline rush when we know we're actually safe. But what if that ability works both ways? Minji suggested. What if humans can also recognize when something scary isn't actually dangerous? Do-hyun thought about this. You mean like how a void crawler might look terrifying but not actually want to hurt anyone? Exactly. They feed on fear, not flesh. If you're not afraid, they can't eat. Ji-hoon pulled up tactical analyses on his tablet. I've been studying the testing chamber layouts. The monitoring systems focus on detecting fear responses and creature aggression, but they don't really watch for communication attempts. You think we could try talking to them without the professors knowing? Do-hyun asked. Maybe. The chambers have blind spots. They spent the rest of the evening studying. Do-hyun read every report about void crawler behavior he could find. Minji researched fear psychology across different species. Ji-hoon mapped the testing facilities and their security systems. The more they learned, the more convinced they became that everyone was approaching the problem wrong. Look at this, Minji said, showing them an old psychological profile. Void crawlers show signs of complex emotional states. They're not just instinct-driven animals. And this report mentions one that seemed to be trying to communicate, Do-hyun added. It kept making patterns with its movements like it was attempting sign language. The researchers assumed it was aggressive posturing, Ji-hoon noted. But what if it was trying to say something? The next day, their classmates looked even worse. Several more students had dropped out overnight. The ones who remained were taking strong medications to control their panic. Professor Kyle-Thera looked tired. Teaching students who were paralyzed with fear was difficult. Today we will discuss survival strategies, she announced, though few have proven effective. She listed the methods previous students had tried. Meditation, drugs, mental exercises, physical barriers, technological shields. All had failed. The key is to delay the creature's psychological assault as long as possible, she said. Every minute you resist increases your chances of reaching the full 72 hours. A luminal student flickered weakly. Is there no way to fight back? Void crawlers cannot be harmed by conventional weapons, Professor Kyle-Thera replied. They exist partially outside our reality. Physical attacks pass through them. What about unconventional weapons? Do-hyun asked. Such as? Kindness, Do-hyun said simply. The class stared at him. A few alien students made sounds that might have been laughter or sobbing. Kindness is not a weapon, Professor Kyle-Thera said. It is for humans, Minji said. We use it to turn enemies into friends all the time. The void crawler is not capable of friendship, the professor stated firmly. How do you know? Ji-hoon asked. Has anyone ever tried? Professor Kyle-Thera didn't answer. She dismissed the class early. As they left, Do-hyun overheard some alien students talking about withdrawing from the academy entirely. The fear was spreading beyond just their class, you know what I think? Minji said as they walked to lunch. What? I think the professors are more scared of the void crawlers than we are. And that fear is making them treat the creatures badly, which makes the creatures worse. It's a cycle, Ji-hoon agreed. Fear creates more fear. So maybe, Do-hyun said slowly, the way to break the cycle is to not be afraid in the first place. They reached the cafeteria. It was almost empty now. Word about the void crawler tests had spread throughout the station. Even students in other classes were terrified. But the three humans sat down and ate their lunch calmly. They had a plan forming. It was crazy and probably wouldn't work, but it was better than giving up before they even tried. Lee Do-hyun sat in the back row of the classroom on Station Nexus 7. He was one of only 3 humans at the Galactic Military Academy. The other students looked like they came from nightmares. Some had 6 arms, others had rock skin, and a few were just floating balls of light. The classroom was huge. It had to be to fit all the different alien species. Do-hyun looked around at his classmates. There was a tall blue creature with too many eyes. Next to it sat something that looked like a walking tree. In front of him, a student made of what seemed like liquid metal kept changing shape. Professor Calthera walked into the room. She was a Zephyrian, which meant she looked like a giant insect with 6 arms and green skin. Her voice sounded like metal scraping against metal when she spoke. "Welcome to survival psychology," she said. Her 4 eyes scanned the room. "This class will break your minds. Then we will build them back stronger." The alien students shifted in their seats. Some made nervous sounds. Do-hyun pulled out a notebook and wrote down the date. He had learned that taking notes helped him stay calm. "Many of you think you are brave," Professor Calthera continued. "You think you can handle anything. You are wrong." She pressed a button on her desk. The lights dimmed. Images appeared on the wall behind her. They showed dark spaces between stars. Empty void that went on forever. "Your final test will be simple," she said. "You will spend 72 hours alone with a void crawler." The classroom erupted in panic. Students began talking loudly in their alien languages. Some stood up so fast their chairs fell over. The tree-like students' leaves started shaking. The liquid metal student lost all form and became a puddle on the floor. Do-hyun raised his hand. Professor Calthera stared at him. The room went quiet. All the alien students turned to look at the small human in the back. "Yes?" Professor Calthera asked. "What's the grading rubric?" Do-hyun asked. "Is it pass-fail or do we get points for lasting longer?" The professor's 4 eyes blinked one at a time. She had never been asked about grading during the void crawler announcement. "The test is about survival," she said slowly. "Those who complete 72 hours pass. Those who break do not." "Okay," Do-hyun said. He wrote this down in his notebook. "When is the test?" The alien students were staring at him like he was crazy. A few were making sounds that might have been their version of gasping. "In 2 weeks," Professor Calthera said. She seemed confused by his calm reaction. "Cool. Do we need to bring our own food or will it be provided?" "Food will be provided," she answered automatically. "Thanks." Do-hyun made another note. Professor Calthera looked around the room. Most of her students were still in shock. The granite warrior student had turned completely gray, which meant he was terrified. The luminal students were flickering like broken lights. "Perhaps," she said, "you do not understand what a void crawler is." She pressed another button. New images appeared. They showed creatures that seemed to be made of darkness itself. They had too many eyes and moved in ways that hurt to watch. "Void crawlers exist between dimensions," she explained. "They feed on fear. They can walk through walls. They project terror into your mind. They show you your worst nightmares and make them real." The students became even more upset. Some were crying. Others were making prayer gestures from their homeworlds. "The longest anyone has ever lasted with a void crawler is 31 hours, Professor Calthera continued. "That was a granite warrior from the strongest military family. He now lives in a mental hospital and speaks only in numbers." Do-hyun raised his hand again. "Yes?" The professor sounded tired. "Are these the same void crawlers from the Kepler incident in 2387? Do-hyun asked. Professor Calthera's expression changed. "You know about the Kepler incident?" "I wrote a paper on it last semester," Do-hyun said. "For my xenobiology class. The creatures there could phase shift and used fear-based hunting. But the report said they were more like animals acting on instinct. These are the same species," the professor said carefully. "But these have been trained for military testing." "Trained how?" Do-hyun asked. The room was completely silent now. Even the most panicked students were listening. They are encouraged to be more aggressive, Professor Kilthera said, more focused on psychological attack. So they're basically scared animals that have been made more scared and angry, Do-hyun said. It wasn't a question. Professor Kilthera didn't answer immediately. She looked at Do-hyun for a long time. Class dismissed, she said finally. Prepare yourselves. The students began filing out. They moved slowly like they were walking to their own funerals. The Granite Warrior students helped carry the Luminal students who had dimmed too much to move on their own. Do-hyun packed his notebook and walked toward the door. As he passed Professor Kilthera's desk, she spoke. Human, she said. He stopped. Yes, Professor. Do you not fear death? Do-hyun thought about it. I mean, yeah, dying would suck. But being scared doesn't help anything. My mom always said that worrying about tomorrow ruins today. Your species is strange, Professor Kilthera said. We get that a lot, Do-hyun replied. See you next class. He left the room and found his friends Kim Minji and Park Ji-hoon waiting in the hallway. They were the other two humans at the academy. So, Minji said, I heard screaming from your classroom. How bad is it? We have to spend 3 days with a void crawler, Do-hyun said. Ji-hoon looked up from his tablet. The fear-feeding interdimensional things? Yep, that's gonna suck, Minji said. But hey, at least it's not a written exam. The 3 humans walked down the hall together. Around them, alien students were calling their families and asking to be withdrawn from the academy. Some were already packing their belongings. You know what's weird? Do-hyun said as they reached the cafeteria. What? Ji-hoon asked. Professor Kilthera seemed more surprised by my questions than by the fact that I wasn't scared. Maybe she's not used to students thinking about it logically, Minji suggested. Or maybe, Ji-hoon said quietly, humans are the first species to ask why, instead of just accepting that something is supposed to be terrifying. They got their food and sat at their usual table. The cafeteria was much quieter than normal. Most of the alien students were gone. Those who remained spoke in whispers. 2 weeks to prepare, Do-hyun said, eating his lunch. I should probably research more about void-crawler behavior patterns. I'll help, Ji-hoon offered. I want to understand their hunting methods. And I'll look into the psychological aspects, Minji added. Maybe there's a way to communicate with them. They finished eating and went back to their dorms. Do-hyun spent the evening reading about interdimensional creatures. Most of the sources described them as mindless monsters, but a few older reports mentioned behaviors that seemed almost curious rather than aggressive. He made notes as he read. If these creatures fed on fear, what happened when they encountered someone who wasn't afraid? The reports didn't say. Maybe no one had ever tried it. Outside his window, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, void crawlers moved through the empty spaces between worlds. In 2 weeks, he would meet one face-to-face. Do-hyun closed his books and got ready for bed. He had a lot of studying to do.